open public hearing, and the topic tonight is the street vacation portions of North Ninth, North Ninth, North 8th, North Ninth, and Wyeth Street.
Thank
I
you.
want to turn this over to Jacob Gratian, our planner, and so you can please take the helm, and away we go.
Thank you, Council President. So this is a street vacation or right-of-way vacation, and I know it's a very strange term if you're not used to hearing it, but basically it's when you take right-of-way and return it back to private property ownership. And some of the exhibits that we'll see later on will hopefully help make sense of that. So as already mentioned, these are for portions of North 8th, North 9th, and Wyeth Street. Whenever we have a right-of-way vacation, we need to know the purpose of it, and the purpose as expressed to us by the petitioners is to adjust lot lines and better use of property. Now, I should note that we do have one of our elected officials absent up here, and that's because Rick Scholl is one of the petitioners, along with Ron Schlumberger. This petition was reviewed by the Planning Commission at the request of the petitioners. The Planning Commission considered it at their August 13th and September 11th meetings. And after kind of mulling it over, they voted unanimously to recommend option number 3, and we'll talk about options 1 through 4 later on in my presentation here. I should note that we did receive one letter in writing, and that was testimony from the Senior Center. We received it earlier enough that it's in your packets, and there are representatives of the Senior Center here, so I'll let them cover what's in the letter. But you do have it to read on your own. So there are several things we have to look at when we get a vacation request, and one of those is did we get the amount of ownership required? And Crystal, if you could go to the first map in the packet. This is just that one there. And so now this is all governed by state law. And what you see in red are the areas of right-of-way requested to be vacated, and then all the hatching around it is what's called the affected area. And what is required in order for us to accept a vacation application is we need to have 100% of all abutting properties and 2/3 consent by area of people within that geometric shape around there. And we got to 67.25, which is 2/3, so we were able to get to this point. We're also supposed to provide notice. That includes posting signs out by the vacated areas and then publishing in the paper. And then finally, the standard to which we review these. And that's pretty simple. Will the public interest be prejudiced by the street vacation? Our duty as government is to protect the public interest, and when we look at these, we have to consider, okay, are we doing that in our decision making? And in doing so, we need to consider utilities and access, basically. So let's talk about the exhibits and get into the nitty-gritty here. So that's the area requested to be vacated. If we look at the next map, this was provided by the applicant. And so just some things to point out. There are 4 lots involved. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see noted there. And if you look at the lots on the right, you'll note that the shared lot line between the two has been drawn in. The petitioners have expressed interest in, upon being granted the vacation, to do a lot line adjustment such that lots 3 and 4 are orientated along Wyeth, except for the cross street, the numbered street. And so that was provided by the applicant to kind of show what their intent is. Now we're going to look at some photos to help you understand, at least the best we can from our vantage point. It is, irregular topography, and there's only so much we can do with photos. But this first photograph is standing within the 9th Street right-of-way, and that little driveway going up with the embankment on the left and the rock wall on the right is the road that goes up towards the top of Wyeth Street. The last house currently on the block, you can see there on the left as that driveway goes up. And yeah, as you can see, it starts to narrow due to topography. The picture on the bottom is the same point, but looking the other side, just to show you, the path to West Street, which is a higher classified street, a busier street in town. So if we look at the next page, now we are still within the 9th Street right-of-way. At the corner of the Wyeth and 9th right-of-way. So that last house I mentioned is to the far left. You can see a retaining wall next to it. And there's kind of a flat area there. And if you see the black arrow, that is where those intersections currently exist. So if the vacation occurred and that arrow was pointing at the intersection of those, it would move. But that's where it currently exists, to give you an idea of some of the irregularity of topography that we're dealing with here.
For clarification, which angle is that, and what is the perspective of the image? Is it facing south or southeast?
That is facing east, looking down along the Wyeth Street right-of-way. The next photo is also looking down the Wyeth Street right-of-way, looking east, but that's about the center line of the right-of-way. And in this case, I wish I was 10 feet tall to have more angles so you can see some of the topography, but unfortunately I'm an average-sized man, so I don't have that height perspective. But that's the center line. As you can see, the top of this bluff is pretty flat, so it's plateau-like in its characteristics. If we look at the next page, so we're still looking east, and this is the other corner of 9th and Wyeth. This is the triangular-shaped lot. And so you can see that there is, some flat area there. And if you look just beyond that, you can see kind of an arc in the topography. And there's the Shadow Canyon Plan Development down there. And that arc is kind of an important feature that we'll see when we look at the topography lines and some of the later exhibits. And the next photo down. So now we're jumping to the other side of Wyeth to be vacated and looking west, more or less. And that the red arrow there shows the depression within the 8th Street right-of-way. That depression is where the city has for a long time put street spoils, but is apparently going to be cleaning that out pretty soon. And those two lots that you saw that the applicant proposed to adjust the line are more or less in that area. So the next page is just a letter from the applicant. Now, note the date that was received on the 13th. That was the day of the Planning Commission's first meeting, and so it wasn't in their packet originally. And it's just one of their additional arguments for granting the vacation. Topography, soil conditions, and things of that nature. So the next, now this is the map that the applicant provided also on August 13th, the day of the Planning Commission's first meeting, to look at it. And we still see the four lot concept, but we asked for a little bit more just to understand the nature of their access, and that's what the orange line shows. Basically an access that serpentines through there with some type of turnaround at the end. So that's a concept from the applicant. Since we're considering dead ends, we look at the next page. Now, when we have access ways greater than 150 feet, our code requires us to consider dead ends. And when we consider dead ends, we want to make sure they're ones that can be used by emergency vehicles, including fire apparatuses, or apparati, if that's the correct way to say it. I'm not sure. Anyways, I think you know what I'm talking about. So there's two that we considered, and they're highlighted there in the red cloud. There's a hammerhead concept, and then there's also a 96-foot diameter cul-de-sac. Just to point out, the city's cul-de-sac standards are less than 96, but don't meet fire access standards, and so that's why we considered the 96-foot one. So, as I mentioned earlier on in my spiel, we talked about 4 options. And option number 1, which is not this, is to allow the vacation in full as requested, and that's not something that we recommend. Options 2 through 4, we have some illustrations to help you wrap around your head what we're talking about. So this is option 2, and this is a little, it's a simpler option than the next two, and is based on the city's 40-foot wide right-of-way standard. All these rights-of-way are 80 feet wide, and they all exceed what we would typically need for a local classified street, which is normally 50. But when we know that there's not going to be a lot of development, and there's numeric standards if you want to know what those are, but we can go down to 40 based on a basic standard. And this assumes that along Wyeth and along 8th. Now along 9th, and I should point out that the yellow is the area requested to be vacated but not recommended in this option 2. So the one difference is along 9th Street. You see a green and blue line that extends about to the center line of Wyeth. That's a water and sewer line, and because of those utilities, we don't want to vacate that. Another thing I should point out, which I probably should have mentioned more when we had the photos up, but the road that goes up to Wyeth is actually skewed towards the east side, and that would be another reason why we don't really want to vacate anything along 9th Street on the north side of Wyeth. On the south side of Wyeth, you can see in this example, the recommendation is to grant all which was requested, because it doesn't go anywhere. It goes to a drop-off, and there's really nothing to achieve. When you go over to 8th Street, there is usable right-of-way, and we don't want to just block it off. And so that's that concept. So option number 2. The next map shows option number 3. And this is the one that the Planning Commission ultimately hung their hat on. And so this is where you're kind of taking some finer details and shrink wrapping it on the map. So for 9th Street, we avoid the area where the utilities are at, and again, yellow is what's being requested but not granted. And then this is based on a 20-foot wide alley standard. And a 20-foot wide alley could accommodate up to 6 homes. In this case, there's 2 potentially that the applicant would have if they adjust the lot lines. And so what this does is we took a little closer look at topography, and you'll see the contour lines there. And we know that in some places there's not a lot of physical room. And so this is why we kind of considered the alley standard. Note that on the left or west side that the alley, quote unquote, is not on the center line. It's actually skewed to the north side, and that's because of where the existing driveway is at. And then it veers to the south, and we included an outline of the turnaround to demonstrate what we're trying to achieve here. It would be kind of an irregular shape, but we want to make sure that there's room available for the turnaround. And probably what we would do if the council grants this vacation is include this exhibit so it's memorialized, so if something happens in the future, they can kind of see what we're doing. But this is planning. We're forecasting, you know, if you're going to carve out right-of-way, we want to make sure it's carved right. Now, in option 3, there are some strings attached. It's not as simple as the 40-foot right-of-way, a very simple legal description. So we would require the applicant to work with a private surveyor and city staff to ensure that the alley and hammerhead are located on usable ground. For example, no topography constraints. And then we would need the surveyor to help us develop a legal description of the exhibit area based on that, and to meet some specifications. There's some radius requirements and things like that we need to make sure are on there. And then we'd use that legal description exhibit as part of the ordinance. Also, we would recommend that in the cases where they're only on one side of the right-of-way, that the alley be on the center line, which this shows. So in other words, where it's on center line on the hammerhead portion, we wouldn't want it to be that assumed alley to be on someone else's potential right of half, because that would be someone else's potential right of way if they applied for a vacation. Also, we would want to have that legal description from a private surveyor provided within a year from the date the council approves. We don't want it to be open-ended forever. For those of you who've been in the council a while, we did that for a right-of-way vacation where we needed the water meter to be removed. And we said, you know, if that water meter's moved within a year, then we can go forth with the ordinance. So some strings attached just to capture some of those finer details for option number 3. So finally, let's look at option number 4. Very similar to 3, except for terminating in a hammerhead, it terminates in the cul-de-sac. Same strings attached as I mentioned for 3. It's just a slightly different standard. So the Planning Commission recommends number 3. Staff recommends 3 or 4. And that's what I got for you.
Thank you. You want to continue?
Sure. So the next step would be for the applicant or petitioner to make any presentation that they wish, and then we'll let citizens comment on this after that.
Hey, I'm Rick Scholl. This is Ron Schlumberger. We're the applicants. Ron's just had surgery, so I'm going to take over from here. So, first and foremost, thank you for hearing this case. I'm here today to request to vacate a portion of Wyeth Street, North 8th and North 9th Street. I sit here today as a citizen of St. Helens. I purchased the property in discussion 2 years ago when I was Rick Scholl and not Mayor Scholl. I put earnest money down on the property and then was able to fully purchase the property on March 8th of 2017 from Maurice and Cliff Zemer. Used to work for the old boys. Wondered if they still owned the property, inquired about it, they did. The request to vacate portions of the streets by landowners has been happening long before I was born, and I imagine will continue long after I'm gone. I have examples of the two most recent approved vacated properties. First in my hand is ordinance number 3211. It's on North 10th, the Merriweather Place. The owners, the Biltons, were granted a 25-foot section of that street in order to utilize an infill lot on the backside of their house and building. The other ordinance is ordinance number 322, which is the St. Helens Marina, and then the 2nd Street residents backing their property, and they were awarded 15 feet on each side of that street. So, and I would like to thank Jacob and the Planning Commission for really looking at this in depth and keeping the citizens in the city's best interest at heart. I feel they really hit the nail on the head here. Due to the complex nature, complex topography, I find myself here today. With rolling basalt and sheer cliff walls, Mother Nature does not care about straight lines. So I have found the need to ask to vacate portions of streets. I reference the comprehensive plan, infill lots, St. Helens Municipal Code. St. Helens Municipal Code, this comes right out of your guys' code book. 19.12.020, General Residential Category Goals and Policies. So I come down to number 2 and I look at B. Encourage the infilling of areas presently undeveloped due to topographical limitations to achieve a more efficient use of the land. And this comes right out of the code, and that's why we find people here. That's why I'm here, is because this property is one of those topographical properties that is discussed in the municipal code. So a couple benefits, developing these lots and the road improvements helps to increase the value of the neighboring lots, puts future money on the tax rolls, and getting infill lots built helps the UGB out, the urban growth boundary. And I could maybe answer any questions that you have. No? Okay. That's my presentation. It's pretty cut and dry.
Okay, does anybody want to speak in favor of this application?
Bill Amos. And one of the things that I've just noticed, I tend to come to these things. About a year ago, I was at Mr. Peterson's application in Columbia City speaking in favor of, right across from Slumpberger's house, putting in higher density housing than probably some of the neighbors were interested in. But I'm concerned about using our land in a reasonable manner and preserving the character of the area at the same time. So I come to these things. I have no real interest in this other than the fact that a couple years ago, Ricky did ask me, what do you think of this piece of ground? And I said, well, it's extremely difficult. Without some street vacation, you won't do anything with it. It's, if you look at the history, there's been some good, strong developers that have owned that property, and they gave up. So that tells you something. It's a tough chunk of ground. And I think that there are folks that would like to make a political issue out of this, but this started long before Rick even considered running for mayor. So I think that that's just kind of bogus. The infill goals are really what we're trying to do is we've got land all over the city, and I know that we're working harder and harder, and things that in the past were considered junk lots have houses on them, apartment complexes. I started out building actually on some of those $50 a piece junk lots. And so that's 40 some years ago, that's where I began. And so I understand, but they face significant challenges. Here in particular, you've got a rock rib it drops off Wyeth Street. If you, I'm kind of disoriented east and west and south, but anyway, if you turn right up there on 9th and go west, I guess it is, you drop off about 40 feet onto somebody's garage roof. It's just not going to be transit territory there. But going the other direction, there's a narrow rock rib about 30 feet wide, and it falls off into Shadow Canyon right onto roofs from there, and on the other side drops off probably 20 feet onto a shed. So you really don't have a lot of options about where to get through. Access to the adjacent properties, however, would be improved by this. If you look, I know the senior citizens have been concerned about their property, and right now they have access on 8th Street, and that access would be preserved. They get their half. They may come to you at some point and say, boy, you know, we would really like to vacate our half of 8th Street, and then we can do more with our property, and that might be the case. But they will be gaining access off of either the option 3 or 4. Access will be provided to them and give them greater access than they have currently, and that isn't costing them money. So right now they would have to have, you pretty much need 4-wheel drive to drive around up there. It's not very friendly country. The total access through 8th Street, again, would not be impacted. If somebody chose to, after the city mitigates that space, wants to create a roadway there, it's probably not impossible, but I would suggest it's unlikely, and people will probably go along this route. In order to understand this property, you really need to see where the property stakes are and get your eyes on the property. And the Planning Commission actually did that. They took some time and said, wait, we're going to recess, and then we're going to go up there and we're going to observe this. And once they did, suddenly the map wasn't flat anymore, and we weren't drawing straight lines, but we're looking at reality. And that's what was needed. I know that if you wanted to maximize profits, you'd put apartments up there and not worry about the neighborhood. But in this case, in the conversations I've had, because we've spent some time talking about, and I have, by the way, no pecuniary interest in this at all, and no, I'm not going to build him a house because I've stopped doing that. But the mayor wants to put his own house up there. That's what Rick wants to do, is put his own home up there and make add to the neighborhood. He just happened to find a place where he could do that. So I think that it's not going to detract from the neighborhood. It's not going to put high-density housing up there. It's not going to do cut off people's access. It's going to improve access. And those are the things that people need to understand, is they're actually gaining value from this, and the city's gaining value because it may open up one other piece of property. Most of them won't access this way because it just, no matter which way you go, it falls off a cliff. It's just what it does. And so it's just a little rock knob there. I suppose you could cut it down to 20 feet below grade and fill it with clay, and then you make it flat and draw straight lines, but that doesn't seem to be a favorable thing in this town, so I wouldn't be in favor of that either. So anyway, those are just my thoughts, and I'm in support of it because of the things that it does for the community, and just like I was for some of the other ones, I tend to follow them. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anybody who's neutral but would like to speak?
Jacob, can I intervene here and get a timer on the participants who will be speaking? Thank you. At this point, we'll do 5 minutes. I'd like to see, before Shauna speaks, I'd like to see a show of hands who will be testifying, who plan on testifying. There should be no problem with 5 minutes then, because if the whole room wanted to testify, I could probably hold that back down to 4 minutes so that we could get out of here at a decent time and start
give you
our
3.
council meetings. Thank you.
You bet.
Your name?
My name is Shauna Harrison. I'm from St. Helens, Oregon. I am here to speak in regards to this development. I think it's important to talk about the maps that were initially drawn regarding the developing of this property. Long before we all got here, obviously, at some point in time, somebody thought that 8th Street and 9th Street and all these streets were going to go through. As time moves on, as we grow, I think this is a good opportunity to discuss traffic flow in and out of downtown St. Helens. The north access of West Street from Columbia Boulevard is landlocked from 7th to 12th/11th, since that's Jackass Canyon, which switches from 12th to 11th, and Columbia Boulevard and Despains Hill. So as the town grows, 8th Street is one of the only viable accesses as a through street from Columbia to West. There are many adversities facing this particular swath of land. Most particular is the dumping of road debris at the bottom of 8th Street. This presents its own set of challenges. 9th Street literally comes to a bluff, to a dead end at the bottom of Despains Hill. Vacating this particular piece of property doesn't seem to be super questionable, if you ask me, just due to the mere fact that there's no way anything is going to go on in that sector. I would imagine, actually, if you got any real geotechs out there and started, trying to even break up any of that basalt, I don't know, that would seem like a better park-like setting area in that back area behind. So my questions for you guys are to question how this vacating is going to coincide with the cleanup that has to ensue at the end of 8th Road in regards to the road debris that's been dumped there for a gazillion years, and how this is going to hinder the growth in the long run of the area. At the end of the day, I do think developing the property in a concisive area is obviously going to be an improvement to a degree, but I think that we have to be really thoughtful and forthright of how they're going to do it. Sorry, I went 9 minutes over.
And who's next?
Is this neutral still?
It was, yeah, I thought we were on opposition. Yeah, were you neutral or opposition? Okay, we're on opposition now.
Okay.
Thank you for.
All right. I question why you waited until the neutral and opposition to limit the time, but I will try to read as quickly as I can.
I had time on Mr. Amos on my wristwatch.
Okay.
The first person.
I just want to. I am Cheryl Young. I live in Columbia City at 1758th Street. However, I manage the St. Helens Senior Center at 375 South 15th in St. Helens. And I am here with several of our board members and some other interested citizens. I'm going to go ahead because you got a copy of the letter, but I think that for the world to know, so to speak, I'd like to read it. We are adamantly opposed to any request to vacate any part of 8th, 9th, or Wyeth Streets that provide access to land we own, which is just across 8th Street from the subject property. While we understand Mr. Scholl and Mr. Schlumpberger's reasons for vacating the streets for their own gain for potential development and income, we believe they should consider the needs of future uses of our property and not even think of closing off a potential access to it. We imagine they will suggest that we could use half of 8th Street as an access, but the possibilities of building an access on 8th Street doesn't appear to be as desirable as using 9th and Wyeth Streets. We would accept any feedback from the city engineer, however. It should also be noted that Rick Scholl, currently mayor of St. Helens, and this is not against the mayor or him being mayor or anything, it's just that that is the fact that he is currently the mayor. And I learned 36 years ago about the appearance of conflicts of interest. It should be noted that Rick Scholl, currently mayor of St. Helens, came to us offering to purchase our land for a mere $1,000 and eventually raise that amount to $1,500, the amount of value on the tax rolls. The value to us is far more than that, when considering future potential uses of the property, and we said thank you, but no. He tried to convince us that he didn't really need our property, that it was of no value to us at all, not usable. Our land is as usable as the property he is thinking about developing, as far as we are concerned, once we figure out an access to it. Luckily, one of our board members' husbands caught the notice in the local newspaper. When our manager picked up the paperwork at City Hall, she discovered that Mr. Scholl and or Mr. Schlumpberger was not required, as others connected with the city had told us, to notify us when he actually applied. And to our astonishment and shock, no one from the city let us know this application was in play. Of course, Mr. Scholl apparently received the percentage of okays to be able to move forward with the request. But we believe he deliberately left us out knowing we were not in favor of it to begin with, and tried to circumvent our knowledge and opportunity to respond by not going the extra mile, whether he was legally required to do so or not. We would also think that the city council and staff, and I'll just summarize, people know we've got this land. We've mentioned it before, and it's a potential income for us. So I'm just a little bit sad that somebody didn't say something. We agree with the parts of the staff report that have been given. This particular map, we do have questions about it, and would request, I would like to know and really go up there and be able to see now again if we would have access with the part that the Planning Commission is suggesting be left alone, that in time that we would have access to our property. And if we cannot have readily accessible flat land to get to our property, then we are still adamantly opposed. And and also as far as getting the proof, and I understand some of these rules, as far as 100% and all, but it's really strange that we're closer to the land that's being requested to be vacated than any of the other neighbors all the way around, and yet we were deliberately, and I have to say that in my mind, we were deliberately left out of the equation. And I just think that kind of smells. So, and so do a lot of our other people. So, as far as getting the requisite number of, because we have plans, that property, we have as much good property, and if you look at your map up there, and when you're looking at the north side of the map, and just look over to the right, on the other side of 8th Street, that little flag-type looking area is ours. And that is as potential a good use for multi-housing, or we have thought about it for a long time about trying to find a company that would put a cell tower up there, and that could provide continuing income for the St. Helens Senior Center, because we don't get much income otherwise, or donations from the city. So we ask for your help in this matter.
Okay, and the other one in opposition?
I'm just a country pumpkin. I don't know about all these city rules and stuff. But you're sitting there showing this map you got up there, the option 4, I believe you said it was. Excuse me? David Belden. I live in Deer Island, but I have a lot of property in town. But that map up there, you're closing Wyatt Street off completely off of A Street, and you're giving him alleys down Wyatt Street to that. You got a turnaround up there. That turnaround is just about on the senior property. Now, that would be one access to the senior property. But if you given Mr. Stroh, if you're giving him the property, we can't use that if you're just turning the property over to him. If that there is still city property, then the senior center could still use that. As far as going up A Street, if you look at the topography map on A Street, you got to be a mountain goat to get up there. And what he's doing is he's closing the best access to that property that there is up there off of any street completely. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, I just want to confirm that's no more public comment on that.
I'm a lot older than
There's
you are.
time to do that again if you'd like.
I'm Shirley Rods, and I live in St. Helens. I've lived here a long time. I'm 89 years old, and I belong to that senior center a long, long, long time. And I've never, for the life of me, figured out why all of a sudden the people that we raised in this town, and I've been here a long time, I raised my kids here, and I cannot figure out why all of a sudden the younger generations feel they can come in and take from the seniors everything that we put here all these years. We built this town. We put the swimming pools in. We worked hard to do all this. And now they just want to take it for free. And they don't realize we worked our butts off putting the things in this town and making it we thought, a very nice community. And then you want to take it from the seniors? That senior center, we don't even get anything from the city anymore. We used to. They used to give us so much every year, once a year. They don't give us anything. And we feed 150 people every week on Meals on Wheels. And most of them can't pay. So we scrounge and scrounge to feed these people. These are your seniors who are feeding the people that used to raise the kids here, and they used to be your city. We had Geneva Chatterley as mayor at one time, and on like that. They were community-minded people, and they cared for our seniors, just like we cared for the kids that years. And I'm appalled that they can come in and take what little we have left, and just don't pay attention to it. I'm disappointed in the city of St. Helens after I've been here for 60 years. I'm disappointed.
Crystal, did you get a name?
I would like to say a word. I did put my hand up earlier. May I do that? My name is Nancy Whitney, St. Helens. One of the things that I noticed nobody mentioned, and I had a conversation with the city planner earlier today, and according to him, the normal size for a street in St. Helens is 60 feet wide. He said there had been some skinny streets allowed, which are 40 feet wide. This is not the norm. Mr. Scholl and Mr. Schomburger are asking for a 20-foot wide alley right-of-way to the Hilltop property. And what concerns me is this has only been approved by the council one time. It's not a precedent, and 20 feet is a hell of a small amount of land. Thank you.
Okay, last call for public comment. And then after that, we'll give the applicant a chance to rebut. Okay, I don't see any. The applicant may provide rebuttal if so desired.
I'm Rick Scholl. Right.
Got it.
So first and foremost, I would like to say I definitely do care about our senior citizens. I care about our senior center. I think people are misunderstood, that they think I'm trying to block the road, and what this is a standard to create a road. It's pulled out of certain standards that the city has. In regards to the senior center, yes, I did approach you. I did offer you $1,500, which is real market value for that property. I was told in your board meeting that you wanted $300,000 for that property. I paid $37,500 for my property. You can look up there. My property is a lot more desirable than yours. I paid $37,500, and you told me you wanted $300,000, Cheryl, in your board meeting. Is that right, ladies? That's not right. You're saying I'm a liar, because I've been completely honest. Okay. Okay. So that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to. Okay. So I did show up at their board meeting. I was told that they wanted $300,000 for their property, and I was there to see about a price. I started with $1,500, which is real market value. That's not true. I'm not. This is my turn to talk, please. Please. My turn to talk. So I started at $1,500. I was also at, I do have a approval from, which was not brought up, from Glenn Hart, an existing neighbor, which I was at his house when he returned your phone call, Cheryl, when you offered him the property. He said, you want me to call her back? And I said, yeah, you offered him the property. Glenn Hart, yes. He actually smokes fish for me, and he has approved this map and signed off on it, and so has Shadow Canyon Terry Waymeyer. So that being said, I don't want to, when Cheryl said, her last comment was to me is I'm going to put a cell tower up there. And I didn't want to pursue it anyhow, because she's right. Perception is everything. I am mayor. I probably should just stay away from that. Okay? And what I'm proposing to do here is improve this street, this access that it's a city street. I'm not blocking you off. I'm actually going to asphalt all the way up very close to your property, which is going to increase the value of your property, not decrease the property value. And I wish you the best luck. You know, I got to say, Cheryl, that I do feel that it was personal when Glenn made that phone call to you, and you said, I was wondering if last chance, do you want to buy those lots? And I wanted to get angry at first, but then I decided I was going to pray, because that's really my nature. I am not a taker. I do give of my community. I give of my service to this community. I always have. People who know me, and it's unfortunate that you have yet to meet me. So that being said, clearly in the opposition, they think I'm blocking them off. And I need to state that for the record. This is a public access, and that this isn't about, there's a 30-foot strip roughly right where the two blues come together on this map. You see that? Where they're both sides of the street? Right there, there's about a 30-foot strip, and that's what the Planning Commission why they had to take a field trip up there and look at it, because it was complex in nature. And they came back unanimously on this recommendation. Okay, this Planning Commission has been running for a long time. I know there's people in here who were on the Planning Commission that, and two old Planning Commission people, and it was unanimous. So that's my rebuttal. I think I've covered everything that was in question. I hope I answered all the questions to the best of my ability. That's what I could do. Jacob, could you help me out on anything that was other than that this is an actual access?
I should point out that what the Mr. Scholl is discussing, he gave me copies of option 3 with consent signatures from Mr. Hart and Mr. Wagmeyer.
Mr. Waymeyer.
Waymeyer.
And he actually did pull a packet from Jacob and studied it extensively. He says, I already know what you're doing. He said, I'm totally okay with it.
Would anyone have a problem in this hearing if we granted anyone who has questions at this point for Mr. Scholl or Mr. Schlumberger to ask those questions and have Mr. Scholl and Mr. Schlumberger respond? Will anyone have any problems with that? Okay, so we'll grant that because I see some hands up wanting to ask questions. Is that okay with you, Mr. Scholl?
It seems kind of unique in nature because it's pretty much, when it comes to planning, it's ordinances and codes, and does it meet approvals? It sounds like, it feels like maybe a little bit of a setup here, but I'll
No setup at all. I
Okay.
just saw hands raised, and I thought, well,
I mean, despite what these people might think, I don't know which way you guys are all going with this. Well, that's not how we work around here. And I've heard rumors of, and like I said, I just got to pray for those people that they find what they're looking for.
I just want to defer to staff with the, because in procedure-wise, it's his rebuttal and then that's it. We deliberate unless we have questions of staff.
Yes,
We have
so
questions of
right
the
now it's the
questions.
public hearing setting, so you can continue to gather facts, ask questions of staff. If you want to reopen the testimony part, you can do that too.
well, I'm going to ask the council how you feel about reopening testimony at this point. Keith, any problems with that?
I don't have a problem with it. We gave everybody a chance, but I don't have a problem with it.
I don't understand why these questions weren't asked earlier when the opportunity was given.
I had questions of staff.
I think we'll close it to the public at this point and open it up to the staff for questions to the staff.
Okay.
The questions I have that I didn't get answered in the planning commission hearing, because that's not my role there, is about access to other lots that are neighboring in reference to my own personal opinion and reference to testimony tonight, what this does for neighboring lots, as far as how does this leave the neighbors? Because the map here is printed to show the subject property, but not the adjacent property.
Yeah, so it's, if you're used to looking at street vacations, it makes sense, but most people aren't.
Nope.
And so,
Not recently.
so I'm just gonna, so this way, hopefully everybody can kind of see at the same time. So imagine that, so the senior center property's here. And imagine that they wanted to come in and ask for a right-of-way vacation as per this request. And let's say option 4 was the one we approved. So as I mentioned, my plan would be to add this as an exhibit so people in the future can understand what this concept was. And so if they asked for portions of 8th Street and Wyeth, we would say, we would consider past vacation requests, and we would probably maintain this shape or the hammerhead if that was the one selected. And so their property line would come out to here and go along there and like that. Another thing to look at is the topography. And so currently the road kind of comes up like this and it kind of fades out here, but this is the flat area. And this area is pretty flat. And kind of the ribbon of flat area, at least based on this topography data, is here to this property. And so if this area was vacated, someone could traverse up to the cul-de-sac and probably enter it there, or somewhere around there. So it doesn't necessarily block off access via the 9th and right-of-way. There is this property here which is developed, and there's kind of a driveway that goes up like this. And I can't remember what this T-shaped property does, but it is largely cliff, and then it's smaller down here. But as far as the bluff properties, as you can see, it's this lot, these lots, a whole lot of right-of-way here, including some of this common space for the Shadow Canyon plan development, which is here, and then the senior property there.
Okay, I have another question then. My next question is I don't believe, rules or no rules, I'm not an expert on street widths, but I know that a lot of people in this town own big 4x trucks, and I don't believe 20 feet is wide enough for 2 4x trucks to pass. Is it wide enough?
It is the absolute minimum standard for a fire apparatus with no parking.
Right. So this is my point, is we don't know, because right now all we're looking at is a street vacation. I don't know how many dwellings could be up there. I'm not telling anybody what to do with their own property that they own. But what I'm telling is that the council member, I have to plan for anything that could happen up there. So I guess I'm reluctant to approve a 20-foot wide street, not knowing what buildings were going to be there.
Just a comment, we talked a little bit earlier today about Columbia Boulevard, and the county owns it, et cetera, in that section there. And I had thought in my mind that was about 24 feet wide, the asphalt. I didn't physically measure it, but I measured it off a map. It's only about 21 feet wide, and that's plenty wide for 2 vehicles.
I wanted to make sure, because unless you're standing there with a
yes,
really,
it's difficult to picture in your mind.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that 2 cars could pass, because I would hate to have somebody get stuck.
There was a question from the audience. I should probably explain, just to help understand how vacations work and why isn't the area around the senior center property being vacated. So if that property was included, it would increase the affected area, and it's all about what the petitioner seeks, and the city, because it's based on consents within that area. The city cannot grant more than requested. It can grant less. But if we said, well, we'll just throw the senior center in there too, now you're really violating trust of the consenters. The senior center or someone else could request that to be vacated, and it would be through the same process. But we can't just tack on other properties at this point in the step. Or this step in the process.
Any further questions from council? From audience? To the staff?
Yes, you're vacating this street. That means that Mr. Stroll and Mr. Goldar, they own that street. You don't have anything to do with it anymore. That's the way I understand it.
That's correct. Right now, it's an 80-foot swath of public right-of-way, which the public does have a lot more control over, and it would be reducing that swath. At least, if this was what was approved, as shown, to as narrow as 20 feet in some places.
But between his lot there and that Shadow Canyon lot, that whole wide street is vacant.
No, it would still be public right-of-way. So, if this was vacated, there would be about a 100-foot swath that's only 20 feet. But on the other side, you would still have half of Wyeth Street, which is still public right-of-way, and some of that alley. And so it would be, 50-some feet left. The idea by showing this concept...
Yes. The yellow would still be public property. Yes.
That answers your question? Any other questions?
I have just a clarifying question, because I didn't have time to tell you that, this was a better option than what was originally requested. I want people to understand that our biggest concern was to have this, but my question is further. I think when you were giving your report, you talked about that with it being vacated the way the planning commission is recommending, you said that there could be 6 homes up there, if I understood it correctly. 6 homes, and I understand there are only going to be 2 maybe, but the 20-foot right-of-way, what I want to ensure, or I would like to know is, let's just say if we did use it to its full potential on the land that we've got, it may cost us a fortune to do it, but it's zoned for duplexes. And if we wanted to put senior housing up there on our 4 lots, now we're going to need some parking, but let's just say 3 of the lots, and the other lot for parking. 3 of the lots, that's 6 right there, 6 apartments for duplexes. Will we then later in the future say, oh well, no, these people decided to change their mind and build more, and it was only said that 6 could be used, it's for traffic for 6 homes. Did I understand that correctly? Because
Yes.
if they were to put 6 on theirs and we wanted to put 6 on ours, then it's already broken the rules. Is that correct? Or I just want to ensure that no matter what we decide to do with it, or if we sell it to somebody that wants to do that, because our whole goal is to try to keep ourselves going with the money that we can earn from that land. And I will go on to say, as far as the cell tower, we would be doing the city a favor, and I would even request that they step in and help us. If we could find a cell tower company that would come in there, that would be less intrusive to everybody up there on the top of that hill. If we could get it leased, they wouldn't need a lot. But anyway, what I was going to say is that we did that. That's where the $300,000 figure came up, because I had researched it, and I don't know if you know how much they buy land, for cell towers these days, but I have seen that in figures, that it can be $300,000. And so that's where the $300,000 came in. Just to clarify that part. But going back to the 6, 6 or 12, at the very most, that could be probably built up there. 6 residential areas, but in duplex form. Would that alley still serve all those people?
The standard would be 6 for that narrow of a street, and so if 2 are built as proposed, that would leave 4 based on the standards.
Still limited as to what I just wanted to know that.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
So is that what's proposed, is 2 houses?
This is not
Asking Jacob.
Well, that's what's been stated. There's 4 lots there.
Question on the duplex, isn't that considered 1 unit?
A duplex per lot, yeah. 1 duplex per lot.
So that's per unit, right? It's per building for the 6, per building.
It says dwelling units in the code. I mean, we always have to look at each on a case-by-case basis, and when you have irregular things like this, but
I don't want to take away some of the potential that we might have to make because I agree. If that access is public, whether it's 20 foot or 100 foot, as long as we have access to our property, that will be good for us. but we don't want to be limited on what we can do with our property once we can drive across.
Yeah, just so one thing to keep in mind is that the consideration for the alley standard was partially based on there's a point where there's not a lot of room physically there. And, you know, we have to be comfortable as staff with our recommendations.
May I ask a further question?
Sure.
When you look at the blue there, I questioned this in the beginning. Why does it kind of come out and go in and make it into an alley instead of keeping it straight across there? You know, and just keeping it all nice and even so that it's the same width at the beginning of Wyatt there, next to their property, and all the way across to.
Yeah, what you can't see there is the dotted line. So it's skewed on one side, and then the 20-foot concept veers over to the center line once the topography is more friendly for that. So yeah, so there's a lot going on. The yellow is what was requested, but then the outline of the concept is also something to consider. So it's almost too much information, but it's one of these, you know, how do you break it down? That's a question for us.
Any other questions first for the staff?
So, have you guys thought about giving access to the other people that are on the other side of Wyatt Street? Because the way you have this now, that you have sitting up here, you have it where it almost looks like there's going to be a turnaround, but in actuality, before it looked like you guys had approved possibly a hammerhead there. I think the most important thing for the senior center to realize is that the way that this is done here, it's hard for me to get a concept of how much road improvement is actually going to go on up there that's going to allow further access down the line. Obviously, everybody who's been down to this property knows that 8th Street literally is for mountain goats down there, and where it's all, there's literally nothing to do there. So my biggest concern, as I said, when I got to the podium, was about forthright for the long run. So considering that what we have with a homeless situation and seniors and the problems facing our community in regards to affordable housing, and the seniors have their lot up there, I don't know why it wouldn't behoove us as a city to make sure we have proper access for them to access their property, because the reality is, without this improvement, it's going to be almost virtually impossible for them to get access to that property.
This is
Your guys' proposed area you have down below, right below it, give me 1 second, Jimmy, you know, right below it, you guys have your proposed Connex development. You know, it's important for a lot of these people to realize Wyatt Road basically dead ends down there at the top, and then there's only one stream of a road that goes past the Alano section that gives Mr. Hart his access to his property, which is the one that approves of this. Also, which is a direct neighbor up there to the property at question. So I just think it's important to think about those things when you guys are looking up here to the other lots, when you guys are looking to vacate and only making a 20 width of that property, you are going to make an improvement that is ultimately going to make that unimprovable. Because at that 20-foot width, it's not big enough to give enough access to the other lot.
Thank you for your question.
Could you put it back on number 3? Because that's number 4.
Yeah, number 3 is the hammerhead.
Because that's what the planning commission recommended, right?
That is what the planning commission recommended, yes.
Just so, since I'm Paul, this is the road that goes this way, comes down over here, and there's a hammerhead that comes this way, and a hammerhead that comes this way. So this road right here would go further actually than the cul-de-sac round down 8th Street. And then this is half on 8th Street and half on the property that would be on the vacant lot. So what they did is they divided this roadway with
for the record, I'm in favor if they never decide to vacate.
I mean, it's just what's there.
Topography
It's hard to
limits
see
that.
when you get the
Topography limits that, though.
So,
Okay.
Jacob,
Limits it because the
I have-
senior center's property literally up here and Fifth Street's down here. Where there's, why can't it's important for you to explain that?
Call for order.
Jacob, could I ask another question?
Sure.
So, if this were granted, without a further vacation for the senior center property, are they landlocked?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, the easiest, the path of least resistance is via Wyeth Street, 9th and Wyeth Street.
Got it. Okay. Any further questions for our staff? Name?
Simple question. I had a chance to briefly look at the agenda and all of this earlier. What wasn't mentioned tonight, but was mentioned in there at one point was that the hydrants are not within the legal limit or something like that. It was like, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can we address that somehow?
Okay, well, and that's a good question. So when we look at right-of-way vacations, what we're trying to achieve is make sure we maintain enough right-of-way to meet our standards, access and things like that. So development of those lots is when we're going to look at what kind of road improvements are required, utility extensions, hydrants, and things of that nature. So that's kind of a later on thing. No, that's an excellent question. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. I'm going to refer to the council at this point to make any recommendations or if you have any concerns.
You do have deliberations as part of the regular session.
Yeah, just close the hearing.
I would, well, there is more than one person on this, well, there's one person and possibly more on this council who would like to field trip to that area to take a further look. And I heard from our audience that there was one or more individuals who would also like to go up and take a look at it once all of this has been presented. So if I close the hearing, then what we'd have to do is do this all over again. So it's if you want to field trip to that area, then I would leave this hearing open to be revisited at a later time. And at that time, then all individuals who are here would be invited to come back and hear the deliberation from a fact-finding field trip. And I think that is extremely important from my point of view, because I'm one of the individuals who would like to go up and take a look at that firsthand. I don't know how the rest of the council feels about it, but
Actually, I would like to too, and I heard that too from both Cheryl and Bill on opposite sides. But I don't know what the procedure is. What's the
Okay, well, there's two things. So you're fact gathering, so still the public hearing portion. And you can either continue it to a date and time certain, then we don't have to re-advertise. So, October 3rd or whatever date you think is appropriate. Or if you want more flexibility in time, we can continue it to uncertain time and then just repeat our notification requirements. And then as Council President Morton suggested, what is not a normal part of our notice requirements but could be is sending notice to anybody who provided testimony, assuming you signed in, so we know where to send it to, when the council decides to revisit this issue.
I'm gonna so move option 2.
Can you repeat that option?
That we extend this public hearing until some further date where everybody has had a chance to do a field trip, and we do some further, have staff time to do some further research on what's going on up there.
With re-notice, including specific mailings to those who signed in for this.
Yes.
Okay.
I second that, but I'd like to explain. Well, I guess that would be discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second on the table. Is there a question?
Not a question, but I guess a statement. I feel like I need to actually look at it. This was platted years and years ago in San Francisco as if it were flat, and it clearly is not. So
Well, I would suggest if you're
I'd
going
like
up
to have an
there
opportunity
to
to see
take
it.
somebody with you that knows the lay of the land.
Absolutely.
Because trying to know where the lines are and everything is
Yeah.
totally crazy.
Well, Jacob, you've been up there. Will you conduct a field trip for us?
I can help. The important thing, though, is that we don't have more than 2 counselors at a
No.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we all
More
have
than
different
one field
schedules.
trip.
So rather than, because if we force it to a date, we'll end up all there at the same time. And that's why if we re-advertise, then no one will get missed out. And then we'll be sure that we're ready for that next hearing.
Okay. No, that sounds appropriate.
Here's another request I have from the council, or for the council.
Do we vote on
that? I have not, to this point, talked about this issue with Rick Scholl or Ron Schlumberger. I have not said a word. They have not talked to me. And I want to keep it that way. And I would suggest to the fellow council members to keep it that way as well. I'd like to, Susan, I think you have a good suggestion in terms of asking Jacob to lead us up there and talk about it, so we all have a consistent point of view, and Jacob can do that for us. So I see that as something that will help us make a wise decision in this. And there are ethical perceptions out there that this is a backdoor deal. I have to tell you that, again, I have not made up my mind, and I have not talked to either our mayor, Rick Scholl, or Ron Schlumberger at this point. And I do not plan on talking to them at all about this endeavor. So I just wanted to go on record for that, and I'm sure that my fellow council members will hear that as well. With that, we want to take
a vote.
Are we going to
Oh,
vote on
okay,
that?
sorry.
motion?
Keith, you want to repeat that?
To extend this public hearing to some point in time where council and staff has had all the time they need to weigh in on all the options, and that we send everybody re-notification that let them know that we're having the next meeting.
Re-notice as required by law, as well as specifically sending notice to those who provided testimony, assuming they've signed in, so we know where to send it to.
And it's to physically view the property.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to close the question?
So moved.
Close your question.
Okay.
It's open now. So do I hear a motion?
I did.
Jenny did.
So moved. Okay. All those in favor of closing the question and discussion signify by saying aye individually. Keith?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. So we're closing that, and now we are going to entertain the motion that Mr. Locke made, and that motion, repeat it again.
To extend the meeting, the hearing, to some point in time in the future where everybody's had a chance to weigh in and look at this, and then give public notice. for the
Okay,
next
thanks for
hearing.
repeating. Thanks for repeating that. And so let's take a vote again, individually. Keith,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Doug, aye.
So we have, Crystal, do we have just one sign-in sheet for the whole thing, or do we have something specific for this public hearing item? One sign-in sheet for everything. Okay, so for those of you who want to receive notice, if you can put a smiley face or something by your name so we know.
I think is there extra sheets below that? So, yeah, there is extra paper there, so we could pass it around and.
Yeah, that's probably best. We want to make sure it's on a separate sheet. So if you do want to receive specific notice, put it on there, and then we'll take care of you. Make sure your mailing address is on there.
At this point, are you finished, Jacob?
Yes.
At this point, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll leave it open to process of field tripping and finding our findings. Everyone will get notification when this meeting convenes again. Okay?
Just a reminder, open house, Salem Senior Center, 1 to 5, raffle, pick $20 raffle.
I thought it was 1 to 3.
They are giving away grand prize, I think, for all tickets. Isn't that right?
We need this gavel on this?
Yes.
I don't
She
think
has
so.
tickets right now.
No.
Okay.
Oh. No, not
What?
to close. Okay, to adjourn.
Just adjourn.
We're adjourned.
So anybody that's here for the 7 o'clock needs to hold for 5,
Mr. Mayor.